Well, I'm not here to make friends is a line we have heard so many times on reality TV that it has absolutely become a punchline. But especially in this realm of reality competition TV, I can't help but feel like it's still a little bit wise. Uh, when you're competing against people, in addition to making TV with them, I can only imagine you have to be a little bit careful about the bonds you form. I don't know that there's a season of Survivor that hasn't featured some deep emotional betrayal. The Amazing Race is a kind of a weekly exercise in how close can you come to a tweaked ankle that turns your spouse or childhood best friend into the most annoying ball and chain you've ever had to drag around the globe. Teamwork is great, but so is the ability to sustain in a group of individuals, especially in the kitchen. Hello, my name is Kyle Nabilsi. I am a restaurant and food writer here in Madison, Wisconsin, and I am thrilled to once again, and again, really just barely under the wire, present to you another episode of This Week in Top Chef Wisconsin. It is Restaurant Wars. It's a whole different animal. There's no quick fire to talk about. We're going to get right into it, but first, just a couple of stray observations. One, I miss Madison. I just want there to be more Madison in this season, more Wisconsin in general. I've talked about that. But boy, Madison should have gotten more than this. I would have liked to hear something from the Fairchild boys, Andrew and Ataru, the guest judges who, along with many other guest judges who aren't actually judges, guest diners who are chefs on this season, get to be seen and not heard from. But I'm sure they're very quiet guys, so I'm sure they said like 5 words during the entire meal. But still, I would have liked to have heard something from them. They won a James Beard Award, for crying out loud. Some things I got right. Kalina talks about having a little bit of a bond with soooo, thanks to Last Chance Kitchen. I said that. Also, I speculated, I think elsewhere, but not here, that Michelle, in lieu of immunity, would get to pick her team for Restaurant Wars. And indeed, she did. But Restaurant Wars. Before we get to that, I do want to make a quick stop in the land of Dunshire for the It's Not Just You segment, where, no, it's not just you. Danny's line about his clam chowder plan. I'm making my interpretation of clam chowder, but it's all about the carrots. Was a very strange statement, because when is clam chowder even a little bit about carrots? But it was also a very Ben Wyatt, Cones of Dunshire moment. If you're a Parks and Rec fan, you get it. You know what I'm talking about. It was kind of funny. Let's talk about Restaurant Wars, or as I like to call it this year anyway, what happens when you like quadruple the budget of the Supper Club Challenge but don't restrain the chefs at all by theme. All the editing up to the point of service was saying one team in particular was going to be the runaway winner of this one. And if you ever see that on this show, or really any reality competition type show, it's going the other way. It's going the other way. That is a big shenanigan. They've done that before. They'll do it again. All the indications were that one team was just coalescing around a theme, and the other one was just like, pew, 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 brownie in motion. Nope. Went the other way. Went totally the other way. There was some good rolling with the punches during the shopping. Dan, in particular, shifted from beets weirdly to trout, and then when trout was not in stock to sufficient quantities, he went with walleye. Turned out to be a pretty good move. We'll get to that later. I liked both themes of both teams on paper. I didn't necessarily have the same beef with them that the judges did. I get the complaint that one of the teams, Dose by Duel, didn't really merge both cuisines they were playing with in their sandbox as much as they could have. But at the same time, you can't be beholden to theme at the expense of flavor or execution. And I feel like they did a pretty good job of making some signature nods to one side or the other while focusing on primarily one cuisine and turning out what I thought were pretty good dishes with some liabilities, such as anything crispy for the Dose by Duel team. Sue had crispy rice cakes. Laura did some sort of a cloud-looking rice cracker thing. Kalina had the tostada with furikake. They didn't learn a dang thing in Top Croquette about batching out the creation of time-sensitive and air-sensitive ingredients. Those things were crap by the end of the meal, and that was a common theme for this service, going from one end to the other. Another big liability, the expo position. The expo chef on each team gets to kind of be the quarterback of the kitchen. It was Danny on one side, Kalina on the other. Danny was maybe a little bit better suited for it than Kalina, who got grouchy the same way she did at Taliesin. Danny did some cool sort of pre-printed tickets for the servers to just jot things into rather than have to write it all freehand. That's smart. But then he also started to kind of outthink the room a little bit. And there was a lot of that, of the chefs trying to like outmaneuver the judges and outthink and like predict what they're going to want. Michelle, check on the tables, for crying out loud. What's going on? Meanwhile, Tom might have been complaining about the channel team, the other team, aside Dos by Dul, their lack of thematic cohesion in the actual served food. But guest judge Kwame Onwuchi is making my exact point at one time in the episode about not sacrificing flavor in service of a theme. He says about Dan's dessert, yes, it was missing maple, Tom, which is a great, just like delivery. But my plate is missing food, and he holds up the plate. It's empty, of course. That was good. And let's also take this opportunity to check in with the lone Wisconsin chef testant. It's Dan Jacobs of Dan and Esther Ev in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. How is Dan doing? How's Dan doing? In his element, folks. In his element. His description of sort of a global menu for the channel team, but with a personal focus. He could have been talking about Esther Ev there. That's Esther Ev in a nutshell. He does what he does there. He's got that smoked walleye with potato cake and some Middle Eastern flavors, and sends it right out into the stands. Sorry to make a baseball analogy after the baseball episode, but Dan takes the win on this one. He's doing all right. It's just right in his wheelhouse. That leaves Dos by Dul, the other team, the team that seemed to be the one going right down the victory lane from the get-go as the losing team. And I mean, it's editorial shenanigans. What can I tell you? It felt pretty clear to me that not only was Kalina's dish a liability, again, those weird furikake tostadas that were just like crud by the end of the meal, but so was her leadership in the kitchen. Like I said, she got a little grouchy. And if the judges had sent her and Manny home, which they were hinting at doing, that would have been a travesty. That would have been solely for math, and I would have been rioting in the streets. Manny's was not great, but it also didn't deserve to go home in this episode. I did like Dos by Dul's menu from start to finish. I didn't have a problem with the fact that they didn't do a dessert, because Channel's dessert had nothing to do with their theme. I don't know what happened there. But editorial shenanigans were the theme of this episode. Kalina does go home. Kalina gone. She's back to Last Chance Kitchen, except when I saw her walking through that door with no eye and her hair down, I knew something was up. And then they showed clips of her cooking, and it looked like it was from To Come. It was not. It was old clips of her cooking in Last Chance Kitchen before. She comes out and she pulls a, I need to preserve my mental health, I'm out. And she bails. Tom doesn't really seem to be entirely buying it, but he plays nice, excuses her. I'll be curious to see if she ends up in the gallery next week. But hey, guess what? Rosika gets to cook again. It would have been a best out of 3 if she had ended up beating Kevin in a create one savory, one sweet dish to pitch your own restaurant on. If she'd won that one, they would have had to go to overtime. She did not win that one. She cooked more Indian food. It looked good, but it didn't seem particularly inspired. All of her flair from the first few weeks just utterly burned off. Kevin, once again, skates with another Last Chance Kitchen survival. We'll see how it goes. Let's do some odds. Laura, everyone's kind of tightening up here. Laura and Savannah move up a little bit, 18-1. Manny drops down a little bit to 13-1. I don't know. 12-1 Amanda. Those two are really close to me. Dan's moving up again a little bit, 6-1, tied with Michelle, who's kind of sliding down a little bit. She's got to get her head about her. That whole table thing, walking past the judges, like playing it cool, that was weird. Girl, you got to not do that again. That was strange. Sue at 4-1, and Danny inches his way up just a little bit, 3-1. Not a lot of Wisconsin energy this episode, like I said. Even our boy Dan didn't know where the GPS was taking him at the beginning. So this week's peak Wisconsin moment is me just going, ee, when I saw my pal Lindsay at the Restaurant Wars as a diner. Hi, Lindsay, ee!